a biting wind swept over the vast frozen wasteland, carving its chill deep into the bones of any soul daring to cross it. Alone, the pistolero trudged forward, his boots crunching on brittle snow and jagged ice, under a sky muted by heavy gray clouds. Years of solitude had carved a stoic layer over his weathered face, but tonight the cold bore heavier on his spirit, a restless storm seeking redemption in these forsaken peaks. The desert's frozen breath whispered a cruel reminder. Peace was a stranger here. Suddenly, through the swirling frost, his sharp eyes caught a stark anomaly, a shape half buried beneath a sheet of glistening ice, unmoving, impossible to ignore. Heart pounding with a mixture of dread and curiosity, he knelt, brushing away frosty crystals to unveil the frozen form of a warrior, unmistakably Apache, wrapped in a frozen stillness that rivaled the landscape itself. The encounter was surreal, a man caught in time, a living relic of the fierce spirit that once roamed these lands freely. The mountain's silence wrapped tightly around the pistolero as he studied the grim visage now revealed. His hand hesitated before the ancient garb stiff with ice, a primal unease stirring within. The pistolero was no stranger to solitude, nor to the weight of suspicion that shadowed the Apache name in these parts. Yet here was something that defied all he thought he knew. His own past, marred by violence and loss, mirrored in the frozen warrior's stillness, triggering a flicker of something long buried. Perhaps a chance for penance or warning of what lay ahead. Something about the stillness wasn't natural. Beneath the frosted exterior, the pistolero sensed an undeniable secret, one that could unravel the hard-won fragments of his fragile peace. Was this warrior a harbinger of old grudges, or a silent bearer of truths that could twist his destiny irrevocably? The question burned hotter than the icy gusts slicing through his coat. He had stumbled onto more than a body. He had unearthed a riddle that clutched at the very roots of his future. As he crouched by the corpse, the air itself seemed to thicken, the desolation growing heavier with each breath. His fingers brushed the cold skin, tracing the ancient tattoos almost invisibly etched beneath the frost. A mix of fear, reverence, and an instinctive awareness thrummed through him, an eerie pulse reminding him that the border between life and death was thinner here than anywhere else. In that frozen silence, the pistolero felt eyes upon him, or was it his own gaze searching deeper within? The sun peeked weakly through the bleak horizon, casting a pale light that trembled and softened the brittle ice encasing the Apache warrior. Slowly, impossibly, the warrior's eyelids fluttered open, revealing a pair of dark, molten eyes that seized the pistolero's soul in an instant. Time stilled as the man faced what should have been lifeless, but was instead awakening. A jolt shattering the cold abyss of solitude and suspicion alike. This was no mere chance encounter. Fate had chosen its player, and the stage was set for a tale that would shake the frontier's very foundations. Many wanderers who roam these forgotten frontier lands have told us that sometimes fate, or YouTube's ruthless algorithm, cancels their subscriptions without a warning. Before the next perilous trail unfolds and new twist shakes our saga, take a quick glance below the video and make certain you're still signed up with our band so you don't lose the thread. We wouldn't want you to miss a single voice echoing through this valley. Check your subscription now and join our legend." The warrior's eyes blinked open slowly, dark pools of molten intensity surveying the frozen wasteland that had been his prison. His breath came shallow at first. Each exhale steamed and fragile in the biting air. The pistolero shifted cautiously, muscles coiled with suspicion, yet the urgency in the man's gaze pierced through the thick veil of frost between them. "Who am I?" the Apache's voice rasped, a tone both ancient and fractured, carrying the weight of 1,000 winters. His skin bore intricate markings, faded but distinct, remnants of old rituals whispered. In shadowed fires long extinguished, the pistolero swallowed hard, eyes narrowing. "You're no ghost, but there's more to you than meets the eye." He glanced around, the harsh wind tearing at their cloaks, stealing warmth and strength. "We don't have much time to waste." Gradually, the Apache pushed himself upright, muscles stiff and aching, his gaze sharp yet clouded with confusion. He spoke with slow deliberation, words chosen carefully, as if decoding his own existence alongside the pistolero. "I am a rock," he said, voice growing steadier. "Bound by a curse, a freezing pact, an ancient promise meant to protect a fragile peace between my people and those who trespass upon these lands." His eyes flickered with a haunted knowledge. Enemies sought to silence me, to bury this secret forever. The ice, my prison, and my shield. A silence settled between them. The pistolero digesting the enormity of these revelations. Trust was a scarce currency here, yet the urgency in Arak's tone stirred something buried beneath years of solitude and scars. "Why was this pact so important?" the pistolero asked, voice low. "And what enemies are still hunting you?" Arak's gaze hardened, the shadows in his eyes deepening. "There are those who would destroy the balance for greed, factions eager to unleash war for power. My slumber was meant to keep the pact from falling into the wrong hands, but I fear they have begun the hunt anew." The pistolero tightened his grip on the worn handle of his revolver, the steel biting cold against his palm. "Then we need a plan. You're no longer buried beneath the ice, but those hunters could be closing in." Both men exchanged a wary glance. A fragile truce forged in the frost and urgency of survival. The Apache's journey from mystery to ally had begun, but suspicion still hung thick in the frigid air. As they prepared to move from the shattered ice, the sharp crack of broken branches caught the pistolero's attention. His eyes flicked to the snow-dusted ground nearby. Deep, fresh tracks pressed into the frozen earth. The prints were too deliberate, too new to be the footprints of some wild animal. "They've been here," the pistolero whispered, voice tight with warning. "Tracks, men coming fast. Whoever's after you, they're close." Arak studied the footprints, face shadowed beneath his weathered hood. Hunters, relentless and skilled. He traced the prints with a trembling finger, anguish flickering through his ancient eyes. "They seek the pact and me." The wind howled suddenly, carrying a cold warning through the jagged peaks. Time was bleeding away, thick with the weight of choices neither man was ready to make. "Trust isn't given here," the pistolero muttered, voice rough but resolute. "But if we don't stick together, neither of us makes it through this night." Arak nodded slowly, muscles tensing to stand. The warrior's scars seemed to pulse beneath fading frost, a living map of ancient battles and sacrifice. Their steps moved cautiously, the fragile alliance testing its strength against an unseen enemy closing in through the frozen wilderness. Shadows lengthened, the colorless landscape swallowing their figures as the hunt for the Apache and the pact tightened around them like a noose. Both men knew the land was harsh, but the dangers stalking their trail were far more lethal than the frostbitten ice. The pistolero's hand hovered near his gun as the snow whispered secrets of a hunt reborn. Under gray skies, the frozen wind carried a sinister message. The pursuit had begun, and the fate of more than 2 men hung silently in the balance. They pressed forward, the weight of old curses and new alliances heavy upon their shoulders, shadows closing in behind them with merciless intent. The cold wind stung the pistolero's face as he tightened his grip on his coat, eyes narrowing beneath the gray sky. The woman stepped silently from the shadows of a nearby copse, her gaze sharp and wary, cutting through the downcast light like a blade. Her dark eyes flicked from the frozen tracks on the snow to the Apache, and then settled on the pistolero with unwavering intensity. "Who are you to walk these lands with him?" she asked, voice low but commanding. The pistolero didn't answer immediately, his senses alert for threats in every creak of dry wood and crunch of frost. The Apache, still frail but steadying himself, met her gaze with a cautious nod. The woman's presence bore authority not born of titles, but from survival, an ally forged in forgotten battles, her every movement deliberate. "I am called Marisol," she said at last, her tone softening only slightly. "I knew Arak before the ice claimed him. I've watched over this territory, waiting for the day he might return. The danger grows nearer." Her eyes clouded momentarily with memory and warning. "There's a hunter moving through the cold, darker than any winter shadow. His aim is death, and his eyes are set on the packed Arak guards." The pistolero's jaw clenched. "A hunter? Someone after the same secret you mentioned?" Marisol's glance shifted briefly toward the tree line. "Yes, this man is no ordinary pursuer. A hired gun, relentless and skilled. His employers want nothing less than control, an empire built from the ashes of peace." She tightened her scarf against the frost. "If he finds the pact before we do, all that stands between war and this land's destruction will be shattered." Eric stepped forward, the frost melting slowly from the lines of his weathered face. "I carry the burden of that pact," he whispered. "It binds the fragile peace between my people and those who seek to claim these lands by fire and blood." Marisol's voice dropped again. "We can't let him catch you unguarded. He stalks the trails, moving like a ghost through the snow. My warnings come too late if we don't move." The pistolero studied her carefully, suspicion still etched deep under his grizzled brow. Yet beneath it, a grudging respect bloomed, a recognition that survival in this frozen wasteland depended on unity, unlikely as it was. "Then we prepare," he said, breaking the silence. "What do you know of this hunter?" Marisol's eyes glinted, hard as shattered ice. "He answers to a shadowy force, a man who trades in blood and gold. I've seen the signs, dead men left frozen and broken, warnings scorched into the bark of trees. They speak of a storm coming, and we'd best be ready." The pistolero exchanged a look with Eric. The former solitude of his journey gave way to a growing realization. This was no solitary redemptive path anymore. It was a crossroads where survival meant forging uneasy bonds, where trust might be a sharper weapon than any gun. Their eyes tracked the fresh footprints etched into the snow, well-formed, deliberate, nearing. "Tracks are fresh," the pistolero murmured. "He's closer than we thought." Marisol's lips tightened into a grim line. "They don't make mistakes out here. The hunter's breath will be on us before nightfall." Eric's hand brushed the scars along his forearm, the fading ink of ancient symbols awakening beneath his skin. "The pact is fragile. This hunter's touch could break it forever. We must move swiftly." The three set off together, the pistolero leading with guns ready, Marisol scanning the tree line, and Eric steady but haunted by the weight of his resurgence from the ice. Snowflakes danced in the biting wind, settling on their shoulders like whispers of the past. As they pressed deeper into the wilderness, the woman recounted whispers passed down from elders of the hunter's name, his relentless pursuit, and the mercenary's rumored connection to a powerful figure bent on unraveling the delicate balance. "He is a blade forged by greed and anger," Marisol said, "hired by those who crave to wage war disguised as order. His contract is death." The pistolero's fingers tightened on the worn revolver at his side. "Then he'll find no easy prey here." Night began to fall swiftly, the cold thickening into a frozen fog that wrapped the trio in britty silence. The crack of twigs snapping somewhere distant jolted them forward into a narrowing ravine dense with skeletal branches. Eric paused, eyes closing as if reaching deep into memories held beneath ice and shadow. "This land speaks," he said softly. "It tells of those who come with violence and those who protect the sacred. Our path is watched by many eyes, unseen, but ever vigilant." Marisol's voice lowered to a warning breath. "Every moment we linger, the hunter closes the distance. We cannot afford mistakes now." The pistolero's gaze pierced the snowy veil ahead. He had spent years shrouded in doubt and solitude, but there was a new resolve in his heart, a flicker of purpose ignited by the fragile pact and its guardian beside him. Suddenly, amid the frozen stillness, the sharp sound of broken branches just beyond the curve told a story none wished to hear. The hunter was near. The pistolero froze, instincts whetted sharper than the biting cold. He tracked the new footprints pressed into fresh snow, too deliberate to be random, crushing forward in familiar patterns that whispered of death. Marisol's eyes darkened. They've come. No turning back. The Apache warrior's gaze hardened beneath his hood, shadows reclaiming his face. For a moment, the storm gathers, our fate entwined with theirs. The three stalwarts of fragile alliance pressed forward, each step heavy with the weight of impending danger. The frozen wilderness around them grew unnaturally silent. The breath of the hunter, trailing just beyond the next ridge, imminent and unyielding. Their story was no longer just survival. It was a battle against time itself, one breath from ruin. And through the white veil of relentless winter, the pistolero saw the new footprints, fresh and etched across the snow, closer now, marking the inevitable approach of the hunter's deadly hunt. Under the frosty veil of night, the pistolero and the Apache moved with deliberate caution through the dense thicket of pines, their breaths rising in misty ghosts beneath the muted stars. The cold seemed to tighten its grip around the old refuge, the air heavy with memory and secrecy. Their footsteps fell softly on the thick blanket of snow, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that had lain dormant within these ancient walls for generations. The refuge itself was a weathered structure, half swallowed by the wilderness, a sanctuary for a tribe long scattered by time and conflict. Inside, the shadows of history clung to every creak of the wooden beams and every flicker of the dying embers in the hearth. Here, relics of a forgotten past were hidden, worn pottery, faded paintings etched onto stone, and most importantly, the secrets of a pact that bound lives and destinies in ways neither man yet fully grasped. As they entered, the Apache's eyes darkened with a mix of reverence and pain. "This place," he whispered, voice hollow, "was where the elders sealed the promise we carry. It has safeguarded our people's hope and, at times, our very lives." The pistolero studied the worn interior, eyes sharp beneath the hood. Every step stirred dust and ancient whispers. "You said this pact could bring peace or destruction," he said, voice low. "But I wonder, who holds the choice?" Arak, his name now spoken with something close to respect, nodded slowly. "The pact is tied to an artifact, something far older than the memories of the tribes we know. It is the key, or the curse." His gaze flicked toward a heavy stone chest tucked beneath a low shelf, half concealed beneath a tattered cloth. Carefully, the pistolero lifted the cloth, revealing a faded leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age, but delicately preserved. He opened it with gentle fingers, eyes scanning the script that wound through tales of peace, agreements, betrayals, and warnings carved in cryptic symbols. She speaks of a time when warriors from rival clans laid down arms, joined by a covenant held sacred, Eric explained. But greed and bloodlust always threatened to undo such bonds. This diary belonged to an elder who chronicled every decision, every broken word. The pistolero's hand traced the lines of a passage. "The artifact grants the power to command loyalty, to quell conflict, or to ignite war with a single will." He lowered the diary, a shadow crossing his face. "And someone wants to take that power. This is more than just survival. It's a battle for the future of this land." Eric's eyes met his with somber weight. "I have not told you everything. My freezing was a protection, a curse placed by those who feared what this pact could unleash if corrupted. It kept me hidden, but the danger I sought to delay has now returned." As the fire's last flickers danced on the rough-hewn walls, a sudden noise shattered the fragile quiet, a faint rustling beyond the shelter's narrow doorway. Instinctively, The pistolero's hand shifted toward his revolver, muscles coiling in readiness. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in a heavy cloak, hood pulled low against the night's chill. Silent as a ghost, the stranger moved with deliberate precision, fingers deftly snatching a worn scroll resting atop the diary. The moonlight glinted off the edge of the parchment as it slipped away. An ancient map, perhaps, or a key to the artifact. The pistolero's voice cut through the stillness, sharp and cold. "Stop!" But the intruder offered no reply. Only a chilling message scrawled hastily in charcoal upon the dusty floor. "Trust not. The frozen blood. The pact's end is coming." The figure melted back into the night before either man could react, leaving behind an echo of cold betrayal that wrapped around the refuge like a shroud. Arak's eyes narrowed, the old fire of the warrior flame lighting briefly. "They know where we are. This is no mere theft. It is a declaration." The pistolero gritted his teeth, feeling the crushing weight of uncertainty. Doubts from years of solitude clawed at his resolve. Could he truly trust the Apache? Was this man's burden shared, or a secret kept too dark? Yet with the stolen scroll gone and their enemy revealed, there was no choice but to steel themselves. The fragile alliance, born in frozen desperation, now faced a test harsher than any bitter storm. "We're marked," the pistolero murmured. "They've sent a message, clear as day. Whomever this is, he's close and dangerous." Arak moved to the doorway, peering into the black forest. "Our enemies wield shadows and lies, but we bear the truth of ancestors. We must be swift before this pact breaks beyond repair." The cold night seemed to deepen, pressing down on their shoulders, as if the very land mourned the coming storm. Yet beneath the heavy silence, a spark of purpose ignited, a resolve forged in the icy crucible of fate. Together in the fading light of the refuge, the pistolero and the Apache readied themselves for what was to come. For outside, unseen eyes threaded through the trees, closing in, and the night itself whispered a promise of violence and reckoning. The fragile veil between guardian and hunter was shattered, and the chase was about to begin. The stolen scroll burned a hole in the cold night air, a silent declaration that the fragile refuge was breached, and the enemy was no longer distant shadows, but a deadly presence closing in. The pistolero's jaw tightened as frost clung to his weathered hands. There was no turning back now. The chase had ignited, fierce and unyielding. Arak lowered his hood, revealing eyes sharpened by ancient burdens. "They have stolen more than parchment. They've nicked the very heart of the pact." His voice was a low growl, thick with rage and dread. "This is a hunt born of treachery. The enemy moves swift." The pistolero's gaze flicked toward the pale moonlit forest, where darkness seemed to pulse with unseen eyes tracking their every step. "We're sitting ducks here. Time to run or fight on their terms, and I don't like either choice." His hand rested near his revolver, a cold comfort amid all uncertainty. But both men knew the truth. They had no choice. The ruinous threat demanded urgent escape through treacherous terrain, no longer a matter of preference, but of survival. They moved through the night, swift and silent, breaking away from their fragile haven into the biting wilderness beyond. Every crunch of snow beneath boot echoed like a warning, every whisper of wind a ghostly herald of pursuit. The pistolero's mind churned. Who could wield such precise betrayal? An enemy versed in cold cruelty. Near dawn, an ambush erupted, a blur of movement and gunfire slicing through the frozen silence. Shadows battled shadows, bullets weaving deadly dances amid cruel branches. The pistolero ducked behind a frost-bitten stump, heart pounding like a war drum. Beside him, Arok's presence was steady, narrowed eyes blazing with fierce purpose. The attackers came with grim efficiency, their strikes precise. Yet the alliance, forged in desperate moments, held strong. The pistolero's trigger finger was steady. Arak, with scars whispered by time, moved with brutal grace. Even pain, the sting of old wounds and frostbite, could not shatter their resolve. Minutes bled into an eternity, until the enemy retreated, leaving behind broken branches and the bitter taste of narrow survival. The hunters had vanished, but the threat cast a long, dark shadow. The stolen lore was gone, their advantage, and every step forward was heavier with danger. Between labored breaths in the frost-sharp air, the pistolero's mind wrestled shadows more daunting than their foes. Doubt clawed at him, a relentless specter. Could he truly trust Arak, the frozen warrior bearing secrets older than the land? Or was this alliance a fragile mirage doomed to shatter? Arak met the unspoken, question in his eyes, his voice steady amid the storm. Silence will not protect us. We carry shadows inside. Old pain, old fears. But alone we fall easier. Trust is a weapon we must wield. Flawed, yet necessary. Their footsteps press deeper into a narrow ravine, the bitter wind clawing at exposed skin. Each man wrestled his inner ghosts, the pistolero with the paralyzing grip of suspicion, Arak with the loneliness carved by decades of frozen exile. The stolen scroll's threat mingled with a heavier weight, the knowledge that betrayal lingered somewhere close, feeding off fractured loyalties. Suddenly the pistolero halted, sensing motion beyond the skeletal trees. A figure emerged, grizzled, rough-spoken, a brigand known by whispers and grudges in these parts. "One of ours?" the pistolero demanded, hand tight on his gun. The man's eyes darted nervously, a flicker of guilt betraying him. "Aye, but I'm bleeding in the wrong direction. The enemy pays well, and a man's got to eat." The shock stabbed the pistolero colder than the winter wind. A traitor among their allies, someone selling secrets to the hunters. The betrayal was personal. The fragile thread holding their survival now threatened to unravel completely. "Why?" the question cut sharp. "Who hires you?" The brigand swallowed and spat out a name. Dark and powerful, the mastermind behind the ruthless hunt. A large-scale rancher whose greed threatened to ignite flames of war from the ashes of peace. The man craved dominion, blind to the cost. The pistolero's eyes darkened, the fight in him rising with newfound fury. Then he'll learn what it means to cross us. In a brutal blur, a struggle erupted. Shoves met fists, anger burned as old wounds flared. The brigand lunged with desperation, born of fear and greed. The pistolero fought not only for his survival, but for the fragile hope carved from endless frost. At the precipice of defeat, when the cold threatened to claim him, Arak's hand was suddenly there, steady, strong, pulling him back from the edge. "You are not alone," the warrior's voice intoned, a solemn vow after fractured trust and icy silence. The pistolero breathed deep, feeling the fragile bond between them crystallize into something more, a unity tempered in hardship and resolve. But as dawn stained the sky with cold rose, their fight was only the beginning. The true enemy loomed larger now, the powerful rancher, a looming shadow stretching greed across the land, hungering for the pact's ancient artifact. And even as the pistolero and Arak forged their path forward, the chilling truth settled like ice in their bones. The artifact itself was gone, vanished from the refuge. Whoever held it controlled the fate of peace or ruin. Their chase turned into a desperate race against time and treachery. The pistolero's gaze sharpened as they pressed on, the weight of betrayal heavy but unyielding. Somewhere in the frostbitten wilds, a whisper carried on the wind. The search for the artifact had become a hunt for salvation or destruction. And beneath the shifting shadows, the traitor's trail glistened fresh in the snow, marking a path tangled with lies, allegiance, and the deadly price of power. The bitter cold pressed against the pistolero's skin as he faced the traitor, a man once counted among their own, now stained by greed and betrayal. The brigand's eyes darted nervously, fear and shame tangled with the hunger for coin. The pistolero's grip tightened on the revolver's grip, his voice low but edged with steel. "Why betray us? Who pays for your treachery?" A shaky breath escaped the man's cracked lips. "A powerful rancher, a man who wants that artifact, says it'll make him unstoppable. His reach, like a shadow creeping over this whole cursed land." The pistolero's jaw clenched, the weight of the news settling like frost in his chest. He could almost taste the acrid smoke of war looming on the horizon. "Your greed risks more than your soul. It risks all that we fight to protect." Without warning, the brigand lunged, a desperate strike born of panic and despair. The pistolero barely dodged, the wind howling as fists collided with raw fury. His combat years surged back, every punch a question driving deeper. Could this fractured alliance survive such a wound? At the brink, when exhaustion and cold threatened to swallow him, a firm hand gripped the pistolero's arm. Arak's eyes burned fiercely through the frost, steady, unyielding. With silent strength, he pulled the pistolero back from the edge. "You're not alone," the warrior intoned, voice a solemn promise amid the chaos. A fragile truce crystallized, born from strife, yet tempered by necessity. In those frozen moments, suspicion melted just a fraction under the cold flame of shared resolve. But the winter's cruel edge had sharpened beneath their feet. The brigand's confession revealed a far darker enemy, a ruthless rancher whose appetite for power threatened to ignite a war that would tear the fragile peace asunder. This man's corruption ran like a virus, poisoning the bones of the frontier itself. The pistolero's eyes narrowed, hardening like iron against the tempest. "Then he'll learn the cost of crossing us," The fight surged. Again, a blur of desperation and raw survival. Snow clung to lips, turned grimaces of resolve. The brigand struggled with a mix of fear and defiance, but was ultimately subdued, his body sagging beneath the weight of his choices and the cold desert wind. After the dust settled, the three, Pistolero, Arak, and the weary brigand, stood in heavy silence. Suspicion lingered, but beneath the frost hung the unspoken truth. This unlikely band must unite if they hoped to outwit the dark forces bearing down on them. As dawn bled muted light across the world, the pistolero broke the stillness, voice low but determined. Time isn't our friend, and the enemy's shadow stretches long. We need a plan, and fast. Arak nodded solemnly, scars gleaming faintly beneath pale skin thawing from the frost's grip. The bigger threat is the rancher himself. He holds the strings behind this hunt. His greed feeds the fire that could burn us all. A cold gust swept the hollow between the pines as the pistolero's gaze hardened. And yet, the artifact, it's gone. Missing from the refuge when we returned. The weight of that revelation fell like a stone into a frozen lake, spreading unseen cracks beneath their feet. With the artifact vanished, their advantage dissolved like mist at dawn. Whoever held it now held the balance of peace or ruin in their hands. A theft of that magnitude means the rancher's hands reach closer than we believed, Arak warned, voice edged with grim certainty. He may already hold the key to unleash chaos. The pistolero's fingers brushed the cold steel of his revolver, with a tension born of 1,000 haunted nights. The pact they guarded, once a fragile shield woven from ancient promises, was now a fragile flame flickering in a storm. Their journey forward had shifted from cautious survival to desperate pursuit. Betrayal had poisoned even their closest circles. Yet beneath the treachery and looming dangers, a fierce determination ignited. The trespasser seeking power would find no mercy here. The pistolero and Arak, bound by trust forged in ice and battle, would chase the ghost of the artifact into the darkest reaches of the frozen wilds. The trail laid bare in fresh snow, marked not just by footsteps, but by fractured loyalties and the deadly price of avarice. With the hint of smoke curling faint against the horizon, the pistolero fixed his gaze forward. The hunt was no longer just for survival. It was a race against a darkness that threatened to consume the land itself. And somewhere, beyond the frozen ridges, hidden beneath the whispered shadows of towering pines, the rancher's greed stretched its reach, his empire ready to rise or fall on the fate of the lost artifact. The pistolero exhaled, a breath like a promise against the biting wind. This hunt had better end soon, before the pact breaks and the West burns in the flames of a merciless war. The frozen ground beneath their boots was cracked and brittle, as if the very earth feared the weight of what was about to unfold. The pistolero and Arak moved in careful silence, shadows swallowed by the pale light filtering through the dense canopy of frosted branches. This was no ordinary place. The old Apache sacred site whispered long-buried secrets in the chill air, secrets that now clawed at the edges of their fragile alliance. Arak's breath came ragged, each exhale a cloud of mist dissolving into the cold dawn. His fingers traced the faint patterns etched in the stonework, ancient symbols, worn by time, but echoing with a power neither man could yet fully grasp. "This land bears witness," Eric murmured, voice heavy with reverence. "Here, long ago, the pact was sealed, the promise between my people and those who would keep the peace, however uneasy. It was meant to last beyond generations, to bind warriors and settlers alike against the fires of war." The pistolero's gaze lingered on the frost-covered altar before them, a rough-hewn slab carved with glyphs, veiled beneath layers of ice and time. The chill seemed to seep into his bones, but beneath it, a flicker of something else stirred. Responsibility, destiny, the kind of weight that settled hard on a man who had once believed himself adrift and alone. Eric's voice lowered further. "My freezing, it was the price paid to safeguard the pact, a curse and protection intertwined. I was hidden in the ice, a sleeping guardian, so no enemy might rip the secret from our grasp." The pistolero swallowed, his hands clenched tight around the worn leather of his coat. "And now that I've found you, what am I to do with this truth? Why me? Why here?" The Apache warrior's eyes, dark and fierce, met his without flinching. "Because the pact chooses its keeper in ways unseen. You carry the mark of those who might uphold its promise or shatter it. This land's fate rests heavier than you know." Unseen winds rustled through the barren pines, carrying with them the brittle scent of ancient battles and unspoken oaths. The pistolero stepped closer to the altar, feeling the pulse of history beneath his feet. Every scar on his weathered face hummed with the echo of past violence, the ghosts of old regrets demanding something beyond solitude. "And the artifact?" he asked, voice low. "The thing that holds this power?" Arak nodded toward a small crevice, barely visible beneath layers of frost and stone. With deliberate care, he reached in and pulled out a weathered box, its surface worn, but guarded by intricate carvings, pulsing faintly with an eerie glow. The pact's heart, long hidden from a world eager to burn the fragile balance. The pistolero studied the artifact, a symbol of peace and destruction, a talisman of power that was both blessing and curse. His fingers brushed its cold surface, as if feeling history tremble beneath his touch. A sudden crack echoed sharply through the frozen silence, snapping both men from their reverie. The ground beneath them seemed to shudder. A warning carried through the brittle air, like the growl of old gods roused from slumber. Before they could react, voices shattered the stillness, rough, commanding, and armed with deadly intent. The pistolero's hand dropped instinctively to his revolver, nerves razor-thin as figures emerged from behind snow-laden trees. The farmer and his band were upon them, eyes gleaming with merciless hunger for the artifact they sought. "Step away from that," the farmer's cruel voice demanded, thick with greed and the weight of tyranny stretched over the land. His men fanned out, rifles leveled, breath visible in the freezing air. Eric's stance hardened, ancient scars twisting beneath his frostbitten skin. A silent promise not to yield the pact without a fight. The pistolero met the farmer's gaze with unshaken resolve, the fiery glint of someone who had long walked the razor's edge between survival and sacrifice. "This ends here," the pistolero growled. "Not with your greed, not with your betrayal." The tension snapped like a gunshot. The fragile peace shattered in an instant as the silent hunter began. And as their hands closed around the artifact, the cold wind carried a final, deadly message. The farmer's shadow stalking closer, armed and unforgiving, ready to seize the ancient power by force. The frozen ground bore witness once more as the stage was set for a reckoning that would echo through the valleys, forging destinies in ice, blood, and fire. The frost-hardened ground beneath their boots whispered tales of old, as the pistolero, Arak, and Marisol stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the looming threat brought by the farmer and his ruthless men. The frozen sacred site, long shrouded in silence, was now a battlefield, the weight of ancient oaths pressing heavy against the cold air. Every breath hung like smoke in the icy stillness, their hearts beating in unison with the rising tension. The pistolero's eyes darted between the approaching figures, men armed, their faces hardened by greed masked in cold determination. They moved like wolves, circling a cornered prey, knowing the power the artifact held and desperate to seize it. Yet the pistolero's resolve was fiercer than the biting wind. The years of silent wandering, of scars etched deeper than skin, had taught him that some fights were worth every drop of blood spilled. Arak's stance shifted, ancient scars flexing beneath his frostbite-streaked skin. His voice, low and gravelly, broke the oppressive silence. "This place is sacred. They come to desecrate it. Blinded by hunger for power, they do not understand what lies beneath the ice, what binds us." Marisol's sharp gaze swept the perimeter, muscles taut with readiness. "We cannot let them take the artifact. Not now, not ever. Its power could ignite a war that would drown this land in fire." The pistolero nodded once, drawing his revolver with a steady hand. "Then we stand together, blood and stone, bone and steel." His breath steamed as he stepped forward, the cold metal whispering promises of brutal justice. The farmer's sneer was the last thing they saw before the air exploded in a storm of chaos. Shots cracked through the frosty air, mingling with the clash of steel and the guttural cries of men fighting for lives and legacies. The sacred ground trembled beneath their feet, each heartbeat pounding in the chaos, a relentless rhythm of survival. The pistolero moved with deadly precision, every shot a measured claim on the unforgiving wilderness. Arak danced amidst the fray, his movements a brutal poetry honed by centuries of pain and purpose. Marisol's eyes burned bright, arrows whispering death through the air, her silhouette a blend of shadow and grace. The battle pushed them to their limits. Frost-bitten fingers clenched weapons until the cold was forgotten. Loyalty was tested with each near miss, courage measured in the grit of bleeding wounds. The farmer's men fought like cornered beasts, but the trio's resolve proved a storm beyond reckoning. Amidst the fury, the pistolero caught sight of the farmer's cruel eyes, calculating, desperate. A moment stretched taut as their gazes locked. a silent challenge echoing louder than gunfire. The farmer's hand darted toward a hidden knife, intent on ending the fight with a coward's strike. But the pistolero was faster. His revolver barked, a bullet tearing through the frozen air, striking the farmer's shoulder. The man's sneer faltered, replaced by a howl of pain as he staggered back, clutching the wound. His empire of greed was crumbling at the edge of that frozen altar. Yet even broken, the farmer was not done. Gathering cruel strength, he lunged toward the ancient artifact cradled in Eric's hands, a desperate attempt to shatter the fragile piece once and for all. Time slowed, breaths held captive in the frozen dawn. The pistolero's voice rang out, raw and fierce, "Not while I draw breath." Steel met stone as the farmer's blade struck, shattering part of the altar's edge. Eric twisted away, the artifact slipping deeper into his grasp, a talisman of salvation. And destruction entwined. The cold embraced them all in a deadly embrace, a fragile barrier between salvation and ruin. Marisol's arrow hummed through the air, striking the farmer's weapon hand, forcing him to release his grip with a pained curse. The balance teetered on a knife's edge, a breath from ruin or redemption. The pistolero surged forward, blocking the farmer's retreat, eyes blazing with the fury of a man who once sought only silence, but had found a cause worth fighting for. This land, this pact, it's not yours to shatter. The farmer snarled, but his strength waned, the fight slipping like snow melting under a harsh sun. His men broke ranks, some fleeing, others too wounded to continue. The battle had been won, but the tremors of what had almost been sent shockwaves through the frozen valley. Arak lowered the artifact reverently, the glow fading as the first hesitant rays of sunlight warmed the frost-bitten earth. "The pact holds, for now," he murmured. "But this victory is only the opening of a longer fight." The pistolero turned toward the rising sun, the weight of chains unshackled from years of solitude settling upon him. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the greed they had faced, but for the first time, he felt the stirrings of something more, a purpose beyond the cold silence, beyond the endless hunt. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of pine and smoke, a silent promise that the frontier's story was far from over. And as the farmer, wounded and broken, retreated into the shadows of frozen pines, his last desperate act echoed faintly over the valley, a curse and a warning. The artifact, though safe now, was only the beginning, and the peace it promised hung by a fragile thread. The pistolero's gaze hardened, the frozen land stretching vast before him. Somewhere beyond the tree line, darker forces stirred, waiting for another chance. The chapter closed on the frozen altar, still glowing faintly beneath thinning ice, as a final whispered threat rode the chilly wind. The farmer's shadow, looming yet defeated, swore, "They may have won today, but the war for the pact's soul is far from over." The frost-hardened earth trembled beneath their feet as the pistolero, Eric, and Marisol faced the grim menace of the farmer and his ruthless band. The frozen sacred site, once a silent sentinel of ancient promises, now resounded with the tension of an impending reckoning. The biting cold nipped at skin and bone, but no chill could freeze the fire burning in their hearts. Fire kindled from purpose and defiance. The farmer's cruel eyes glinted with relentless greed as he stepped forward, the very air seeming to bow before his ambition. "Step aside," he snarled, voice thick with the threat of dominion. "The artifact belongs to me, and with it, this land will bend to my will." His men fanned out, weapons drawn, ready to claim what they believed was theirs by force. Arek's gaze darkened, ancient scars rippling beneath frost-thawed skin. "This ground is sacred," he declared, voice low but resolute. "You threaten more than an object. You assault a bond forged in blood and honor, one you do not understand." Marisol's eyes blazed as she notched an arrow to her bow, her frame coiled with lethal grace. "We won't let your greed unravel what so many died to protect." The pistolero stepped forth, revolver steady in his hand, breath a steaming ghost in the frigid air. "This land, this pact, it's not yours to break, not by threats nor by force." His words hung in the frozen silence, a challenge solid as the ice beneath them. Then, like a tempest unchained, chaos burst forth. Gunfire cracked through the cold dawn, echoing against the skeletal pines. The clash of wills ignited, each heartbeat a drumbeat in the symphony of survival. The pistolero moved with deadly purpose, every shot precise and unyielding. Arak danced amid the fray, his centuries of pain honed into brutal artistry. Marisol, shadow and whisper, released arrow after arrow, each a striking note of defiance. The farmer's men replied with ferocity born of desperation, their greed-fueled resolve clashing against the guardians of the pact. The frozen ground bore witness to the fury, the ancient altar trembling beneath the weight of battles fought in the name of peace and vengeance alike. Amid the tempest, the pistolero caught the farmer's gaze, a cold flicker of calculations and fury. The man's hand darted suddenly for a hidden knife, intending a coward strike. But the pistolero was faster. His revolver thundered, the bullet tearing through the frosty air and lodging deep into the farmer's shoulder. The sneer vanished, replaced by a howl of pain and rage. The empire of greed crumbled on the edge of the sacred ground. Refusing to relent, the farmer lunged desperately toward the artifact cradled in Arek's hands, a last, violent attempt to rip the fragile piece apart. Time conspired to freeze itself. The pistolero's voice rang out, "Not while I draw breath." Steel struck stone as the farmer's blade clanged harmlessly against the altar's edge. Arak twisted away, the artifact slipping deeper into his grasp, pulsing faintly with the weight of ages. An arrow hissed through the silent dawn, striking the farmer's weapon hand. He cried out, fingers loosened, and the artifact remained safe, its fragile flame shielded by resolve and sacrifice. The pistolero surged forward, blocking the farmer's retreat with a furious glare. "This land, this pact, it's beyond the reach of your greed." The farmer snarled, veins bulging, but strength waned like snow beneath an unforgiving sun. His men faltered, some fleeing into the cold shadows, others too broken to resist further. As the battle waned, a profound quiet settled over the frozen altar. Arak lowered the artifact reverently, its eerie glow fading with the first gentle rays of sunlight. The pact endures. For now, he whispered. Yet the road ahead is long, and these wounds run deeper than cold or steel. The pistolero turned toward the rising sun, burden lifted from shoulders once bowed beneath solitude's weight. A new purpose stirred in his chest, a reason forged not of vengeance, but of hope. The wind shifted softly, carrying pine and smoke as a silent promise. The frontier's story was far from over, but for this moment, a fragile peace held sway. Behind them, the wounded farmer retreated into the frozen woodland vale, his curses swallowed by the cold air. Though defeated, his shadow lingered, a warning echoed faintly by the whispering pines. The packed soul remained contested, balanced atop a knife's edge. The pistolero's gaze hardened, scanning the expanse of wild land stretching before him. Somewhere beyond the tree line, darker forces stirred, waiting, watching for their moment. But here, beneath thinning ice and softening frost, hope gleamed, quiet, steadfast, and unbroken. The final glimpse was of the ancient altar, still humming softly beneath the melting ice, a testament to resilience, to battles won and wars yet to come. And as the sun climbed, warming the frozen earth, the pack's promise endured. They had won this day, but the frontier's true test lay ahead, an eternal struggle wavering between shadow and light, war and peace. The pistolero and Eric stood side by side, guardians no longer solitary, but bound by something deeper: friendship, trust, and the unyielding will to protect what mattered most. Their eyes met with a silent vow. The pact was safe, for now. Together, they would face whatever came next, for the frontier belonged to those who dared to stand for peace. Beneath their feet, as the pistolero, Eric, and Marisol faced the grim menace of the farmer and his ruthless band. The frozen sacred site, once a silent sentinel of ancient promises, now resounded with the tension of an impending reckoning. The biting cold nipped at skin and bone, but no chill could freeze the fire burning in their hearts. Fire kindled from purpose and defiance. The farmer's cruel eyes glinted with relentless greed as he stepped forward, the very air seeming to bow before his ambition. "Step aside," he snarled, voice thick with the threat of dominion. "The artifact belongs to me, and with it, this land will bend to my will." His men fanned out, weapons drawn, ready to claim what they believed was theirs by force. Eric's gaze darkened, ancient scars rippling beneath frost-thawed skin. "This ground is sacred," he declared, voice low but resolute. "You threaten more than an object. You assault a bond forged in blood and honor, one you do not understand." Marisol's eyes blazed as she notched an arrow to her bow, her frame coiled with lethal grace. "We won't let your greed unravel what so many died to protect." The pistolero stepped forth, revolver steady in his hand, breath a steaming ghost in the frigid air. "This land, this pact, it's not yours to break, not by threats, nor by force." His words hung in the frozen silence, a challenge solid as the ice beneath them. Then, like a tempest unchained, Chaos burst forth. Gunfire cracked through the cold dawn, echoing against the skeletal pines. The clash of wills ignited, each heartbeat a drumbeat in the symphony of survival. The pistolero moved with deadly purpose, every shot precise and unyielding. Iraq danced amid the fray, his centuries of pain honed into brutal artistry. Marisol, shadow and whisper, released arrow after arrow, each a striking note of defiance. The farmer's men replied with ferocity born of desperation, their greed-fueled resolve clashing against the guardians of the pact. The frozen ground bore witness to the fury, the ancient altar, trembling beneath the weight of battles fought in the name of peace and vengeance alike. Amid the tempest, the pistolero caught the farmer's gaze, a cold flicker of calculations and fury. The man's hand darted suddenly for a hidden knife, intending a coward's strike. But the pistolero was faster. His revolver thundered, the bullet tearing through the frosty air and lodging deep into the farmer's shoulder. The sneer vanished, replaced by a howl of pain and rage. The empire of greed crumbled on the edge of the sacred ground. Refusing to relent, the farmer lunged desperately toward the artifact cradled in Eric's hands. A last, violent attempt to rip the fragile piece apart. Time conspired to freeze itself. The pistolero's voice rang out, "Not while I draw breath." Steel struck stone as the farmer's blade clanged harmlessly against the altar's edge. Eric twisted away, the artifact slipping deeper into his grasp, pulsing faintly with the weight of ages. An arrow hissed through the silent dawn, striking the farmer's weapon hand. He cried out, fingers loosened, and the artifact remained safe, its fragile flame shielded by resolve and sacrifice. The pistolero surged forward, blocking the farmer's retreat with a furious glare. This land, this pact, it's beyond the reach of your greed. The farmer snarled, veins bulging, but strength waned like snow beneath him. Unforgiving son. His men faltered, some fleeing into the cold shadows, others too broken to resist further. As the battle waned, a profound quiet settled over the frozen altar. Eric lowered the artifact reverently, its eerie glow fading with the first gentle rays of sunlight. "The pact endures, for now," he whispered. "Yet the road ahead is long, and these wounds run deeper than cold or steel." The pistolero turned toward the rising sun, burden lifted from shoulders once bowed beneath solitude's weight. A new purpose stirred in his chest, a reason forged not of vengeance, but of hope. The wind shifted softly, carrying pine and smoke as a silent promise. The frontier story was far from over, but for this moment, a fragile peace held sway. Behind them, the wounded farmer retreated into the frozen woodland vale, his curses swallowed by the cold air. Though defeated, his shadow lingered, a warning echoed faintly by the whispering pines. The pack's soul remained contested, balanced atop a knife's edge. The pistolero's gaze hardened, scanning the expanse of wild land stretching before him. Somewhere beyond the tree line, darker forces stirred, waiting, watching for their moment. But here, beneath thinning ice and softening frost, hope gleamed, quiet, steadfast, and unbroken. The final glimpse was of the ancient altar, still humming softly beneath the melting ice, a testament to resilience, to battles won and wars yet to come. And as the sun climbed, warming the frozen earth, the pact's promise endured. They had won this day, but the frontier's true test lay ahead, an eternal struggle, wavering between shadow and light, war and peace. The pistolero and Eric stood side by side, guardians no longer solitary, but bound by